And President Biden appears to be walking back his prediction of a ceasefire in the Middle East, expressing skepticism that a deal could be reached in the war. For the details on this, we go live to One America's chief White House correspondent, Monica Page. Good morning, Monica. Why is the president appearing to be less optimistic here about a potential ceasefire?
Well, less optimistic is the right way to put it, Sonny. Hope springs eternal is what President Biden said on Thursday before leaving for the southern border when he was asked if he still expected an agreement on Monday. Now, this comes as Hamas has again rejected any sort of ceasefire proposal. And for more on this, I want to bring in spokesperson for the office of Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, Tal Heinrich. Tal, thank you so much for joining us. President Biden, we know, still remains hopeful that a deal can be reached, even if it's not by Monday. But are you positive that a deal can be brokered, and is it even possible?
Well, we are investing military efforts and diplomatic efforts to try to bring to another agreement, the kind of which we saw back in November that facilitated the exit of more than 100 hostages from Gaza. We certainly hope that this could be achieved, but right now there are no signs of it, nothing that I can fill you in on. You see, Hamas's terms so far in the negotiations behind the scenes have been delusional. That's how the Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu referred to them, and even U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken referred to them as non-starters. We set very clear red lines for any potential deal. We said that we will not agree to release thousands of Palestinian prisoners, people who have been involved in terrorist activity against Israelis. In exchange, we said that we will not agree to withdraw IDF forces entirely from the Gaza Strip, because that would mean giving up on achieving a total victory against Hamas. But we said that we will agree to facilitate more humanitarian pauses in the fighting for the release of more hostages. We said it back in November. We still stand by it today. But Hamas, they have to be serious about these negotiations.
Right, let's talk about that. This past week, the Hamas spokesperson said the group would not trade Israeli troops held hostage for those Palestinians imprisoned for terrorism. So, Tal, how do you try to even negotiate with a terrorist group like Hamas, who is seemingly not helping negotiations and continuously rejects any sort of ceasefire or humanitarian proposals?
Of course, you see, there are no good solutions here. Obviously, we can't trust Hamas. These are the people that invaded our country on October 7th and raped and sexually abused and are still abusing, by the way, some of these young women who have been held captive for about 5 months almost right now. Obviously, you can't trust them, but we know what works against Hamas, and that is heavy military pressure. This is why we keep crushing them above the ground, below the ground. We dismantle their terror infrastructure. And our progress in this war that we didn't start and didn't want has been very impressive so far in what pertains to the elimination of the terrorist organization and military capabilities. But we know that the combination of the diplomatic avenue and the military pressure is what brought us success back in November. We certainly hope that this could be achieved once again.
Absolutely. And Tal, before we go, are you aware of the current state of the hostages that are still being held by Hamas? And are you able to give us any sort of update on the current conditions of those hostages?
So, Monica, we know that 134 Israeli hostages are still being held in Hamas captivity. About 100 of them, we believe, are still alive. And I can tell you that we've been hearing horrendous accounts from hostages who came back to Israel after they were released back in November. Aviva Segel, one of the elderly hostages, her husband Keith, by the way, is a U.S. citizen still being held captive there. She described some of her conversations with the young women who are still there, and they told her that they were sexually abused, that the Hamas terrorists followed them to the bathroom, that they touched them and so forth. It's terrible. They were, these people are deprived of sleep, of medical care, of food. They barely even see sunlight, being held in the Hamas terror dungeons underground.
Yeah, it's absolutely sickening. We pray those hostages come home safe and sound where they belong. Tal Heinrich, spokesperson for the office of Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, thank you so much for joining us here on One America News. We always love having you.
Thank you, Monica.